Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer Podcast. I'm Thomas Vick, joined as always by Seth Wilson. And also, we have a special guest today. Jeshua Lauka is with us, and we are looking forward to the conversation we're going to have with Jeshua today of LightStone Law. Seth, how's it going today?
Thomas, I'm doing great, and like you, I'm very excited that Jeshua agreed to jump on the podcast with us today and tell his story. I think it fits with what we are trying to accomplish through the Lifetime Legacy Lawyers podcast in terms of helping lawyers develop a purpose-driven law firm and to do the things they feel called to do in and through the vehicle of law. And so, Jessica, why don't you introduce us just kind of where you are now, and then maybe we'll step back in time and go through your journey a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Seth and Thomas, for having me. So, as you mentioned, Lightstone Law, since January 1 of this year, is the law firm that I co founded with three other partners. We're located in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and happy to talk through some of the purpose and the why behind it. But we are a law firm that serves businesses and families. My practice area focusing on general counsel work for privately held companies, but anything business, real estate planning, litigation that arises from those areas is what we do. And yeah, happy to talk with you both.
Awesome. Well, why don't we sort of step back in time? Because Joshua, you and I actually met in law school, and we both went to Regent University School of Law in Virginia Beach, Virginia. So, kind of walk us through that process, and then what you did after graduation, and the journey that led up to Lightstone here in January of 2026.
Yeah, happy. And I think what I'll do is I'll step back even just a half a step before then and say that, so law school in general was something that I always knew I was going to do since I was headed into high school. I think, talking about purpose, I went through a time in my life going to high school where purpose was on my heart, and I knew I was going to go to law school because I was passionate about learning, particularly reading. I was passionate about justice, and I thought law school, who knew, I didn't know what it was going to result, but I did know that that's what I was going to do. And Regent Law was, I think how I even originally encountered Regent was they had some tagline that said law is it's a calling. There was something there. Law is a calling. And I really looked at my vocation, what I thought I was going to do, to be as a calling. Not really sure what exactly that meant going to Regent, but that's where we met though. 2005 I started, and after when I graduated in 2008, I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a purposeful vision of serving, but ultimately what it led me to was my first job out of law school, coming back to Michigan, my home state, and working at a firm that I thought they would provide opportunities for me to give back. They provided pro bono opportunities. They were community oriented, and they were a business law firm. So it wasn't necessarily what I thought I would be doing, but when I got into the law firm, what it exposed me to was all the stuff that law school doesn't teach you, the business side of law, right? That it's kind of a little bit of a rude awakening, but then also just things that were near to my heart, giving back to my community. So serving on boards of things that were near to my heart, and some of the things that I'm passionate about today, which is good governance, corporate governance, serving on boards, advising boards, and then also the private practice of law, working with businesses, which led me up to, I was at this firm for about 4 years, moved my family to Grand Rapids area to work at a boutique business law firm where I had the opportunity to essentially be the succession plan for the founding partner who was looking to scale back. And this was back in 2012 when I moved my family up to Grand Rapids. The law firm at that time was David and Wieringa, and I joined them as an associate attorney. And about 7 years later, the firm became David Wieringa and Lauka. My last name became an equity partner there,
Nice.
and so things started to change at that point. Meaning, we were a boutique business law firm, and I had two partners that were doing quite well, but were at different seasons of their lives. One, the founding partner, really scaling back since I was there. I was in the mode where, 7 or 8 years into my time at the firm being an equity owner, now, you get the problem of what you both faced, I'm sure, when you do good work, what you are rewarded with, more good work, more clients. And ultimately, I was only one person and we were a small firm and I was feeling the pressure. So the pressure being we weren't interested in growing as a firm necessarily, but I didn't like sending good clients away. And at the same time, I was having people who wanted to be part of our team. And so all of that leading up to, about 4 or 5 years ago, where I was having a conversation with a mentor of mine, not complaining, but talking through the good challenges of, at my phase in the practice, I felt like I was almost drowning in work, but not quite. It was, gee, I'm just keeping my head above water. That's kind of where I felt I was, and I didn't know what to do with these challenges. The growth that came in, and then, as good mentors do, this guy challenged me, asked me a thoughtful question, and said, "Hey, Joshua, if God is bringing you good people that want to be a part of your team, good clients, why would you not view that as a stewardship opportunity?" And so what that meant was, well, I would have to change my paradigm if that's the case. And so what that ultimately led to is me having a conversation with my then partners to tell them, you know, I'm got to this point where I feel my conviction is to do something different. My conviction is really twofold. It's to create a law firm that can scale so that I can say yes. So that when clients come to me, I can say yes because we've got processes and people that can handle all of that good client work. And we've got processes so I can say yes to good team members. As lawyers and other support staff want to join us, we can do that. And then more fundamentally, what I was looking to do was I wanted to create something to get my name off of it. I never I was I was thinking that was very nice of my partners to put my name on the firm. I never asked for that and actually never went to law school thinking I would have my name on a firm. But I wanted to really have a firm that had a name that reflected clearly articulated mission, vision, and values that reflected my core why, my purpose, what drove me, and then invite people to participate in that if they were called to do so. And so all of that was what led to January 1 of LightStone Law being launched. So I'll stop there, but rushing through a whole bunch of things, that's where I am right now.
That's incredible. Like going through that history, I'm sure that brings up a lot of emotion and memories and everything. And just in case you were wondering what the tagline says, Regent Law is more than a profession; it's a calling. And I
Yes.
still have that on my desk every
Love it.
day. That was a few years ago. We'll just leave it at that, right? Thomas, I'll throw it over to you to do some follow up questions on that.
Yeah, so your statement about wanting to do something more, something that you're passionate about and kind of in line with your values, and the story about you going to Regent School of Law, I mean, that kind of reminds me of my experience in deciding to go to Liberty University School of Law, which is kind of a sister school to Regent there in Virginia. I remember seeing the replica of the United States Supreme Court that they have at Liberty University, and I remember the dean there, Dean Staver, saying that the reason why we have this is to lift your vision to what you can do in the practice of law, the kind of change that you can make in the practice of law, and just have big goals, big dreams, and pursue them. And I look on that, and maybe my purpose is not it's not directed in the same way, but I still have a purpose in law. I'm not trying to change United States constitutional law through litigation, appellate, work and that kind of thing, like I thought I might be doing because I was going to Liberty. It's just the day-to-day law practice that I have right now and the impact that you can have on a community and, really the city and the state at large because of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis in the law practice. So that's kind of how I related to your statement on that. There were so many things about your opening statement there that I was kind of taking notes of, but one thing that piqued my attention is you wanted a law firm to scale, to be able to scale. So I wanted to kind of hit on that with you. What does it take to scale a law firm?
People smarter than me along for the journey. I quickly learned that. Yes, it was, and it was when I knew I was going to go build this thing. One of the books that, I'm a huge reader of a whole lot of different subjects, but there is a book called Who, Not How by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. And the whole premise of that is finding the right who's to do the things that I cannot, that outside of the things that I feel uniquely gifted and called to do. And so for all of the process building, it's figuring out who can build all of these different functions that are necessary in every business. I look back at one of the books that kind of shaped my paradigm of when I was moving into this conviction of scaling a business was the book, The E-Myth, the entrepreneurial myth, why most small businesses die. And it really did highlight I think a trap that a lot of the small businesses get into of going to hang up their own shingle and, like I said, doing good work, being rewarded with more good work, and then burning out because they don't have those other institutions in place. They have the practitioner, but they don't have the managerial, and they don't have the visionary that you just need. And so finding all of those right pieces. So finding other people to join a part of the team that can operate in their lanes so that we can all operate at our best, yes.
Yeah, and I think I can speak from experience with that because, for the first 7 years of my law practice, I didn't have paralegal, didn't have a legal assistant. And it was pretty amazing that once I hired somebody, wow, I have the capacity to do so much more. And, you don't realize what you're missing if you don't hire somebody when you need to.
But it's challenging though, isn't it? Because there's fear there. It's,
Yes.
As we experience, I mean, the payroll gets bigger and it comes every couple of weeks, and it's the part of the entrepreneur journey. It's great, exciting, but it can be weighty.
Yeah. To that end, Joshua, how did you go about those decisions in terms of trying to plan and budget and figure out what tilted the scale in favor of making an additional hire versus maybe we want to hold off on that? You've got about 5 months in here, but obviously quite a bit of history to draw from on that fact. But what are some of those factors that help you make that decision?
Yeah, and thankfully I have partners who are gifted in ways that I'm not, that are, more of the integrator, the operations in the weeds. I'm more of the visionary of seeing what could be, and so bringing me down to reality and asking those nuts and bolts questions of, at a minimum of, well, if we need to make payroll every couple of weeks and we want to have reserve, and we fundamentally have to make sure that we have a machine that's going to continue to run and operate well. But then it's also that tension of, we want to hire primarily for the future. We don't want to, I've heard it said, if you're hiring because you have a need now, you're hiring too late. But it's a tension, and it takes both the visionary and the integrator of that vision to wisely figure out the who's and when to hire. So wisdom, patience, and also when you make a decision, I think act quickly. I think that's when you've decided, well, then execute.
I love it. I love it. And that's such an important point that I think recognizing, one, what your particular skill set, giftings, approach is, and finding someone to help identify those complementary counterpoints, right? So we can say, yes, the vision's great. Okay, let me ask some clarifying questions about how we're going to actually integrate, to use that phrase, and get from A to B, because we can't skip B to get to Z. We've got to go through the process. But that vision, being able to transcend sort of the day to day and get above that and go, wait a minute, this is going to be good for us in the long term. And yes, there's going to be things we need to figure out. And so I think that's such a valid consideration for folks to understand, whether that's a mentor when you're first getting started, or someone, a colleague at another firm, or as you mentioned, a partner in your existing office. It's so important to get that feedback. And I think it's a sort of a proverb, right? In the wisdom comes from seeking counsel from wise folks around you who have done it before. And that's such a good thing to do to make sure that you are making the right decision for your firm. But once you've made that decision, go get it done.
Absolutely. Yes.
Another question that I had for you, Jeshua, you kind of mentioned that it really wasn't your goal to have your name on the law firm letterhead. And that's a little bit counterintuitive to us as lawyers. That's kind of the dream, every mother's dream of their child going to law school is that they're going to have their child's name on the letterhead and on the sign out front at the big intersection, that kind of thing. But it kind of makes me think of, if you're less personality driven in the law firm, and I guess it's more operational in nature, maybe that helps to scale the law firm, and maybe people aren't relying on the big law firm partner to handle their matter, and they're more willing to spread the wealth, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I go back to my story and just think, yeah, what got me to law school was probably different than what I heard a lot of my classmates or anyone. You ask any lawyer, what got them to law school. I mean, you probably heard classmates or colleagues say, yeah, I went to law school because someone said I was good at arguing or something. Like there's always a story originating from that. But the my path to law school was primarily, thinking that I didn't know what I was going to do, but maybe it was working for international justice mission, doing some justice work at an international level, or gosh, the private practice of law just wasn't on my radar. So maybe I'm a little quirky in that way, but the whole letter, I don't know. So I know, Thomas, I did not answer your question one bit, but
No, but it's such a good observation to say, again, as you come into building that practice or thinking about starting your own practice, you have to bring your uniqueness to that. And so if that's the driving force at the end of the day, great. And you leverage that to reflect the missional component or the purpose-driven component of the firm. And I think that's one thing you said well was, look, I want this name to mean something. It needs to articulate what we're all about. And my father-in-law was a solo practitioner for the latter part of his career, and he used the image of a lighthouse and a cross on his letterhead because he could. And that allowed him to communicate and have conversations with people that he may not otherwise have had if he just had his name on the letterhead. And so that symbolism, that imagery, those things are so important to reflect who you are and what you're about. And then you got to sort of live up to that, right? You got to deliver, and that's not always easy.
The other side of that coin, absolutely. Yeah, in part of the journey in the decision to start LightStone, it was, my partners at David and Wieringa and Lauka, we shared the same values, shared the same faith, good people, good culture, and as we in any organization, the culture, it's the people, it's the leaders. It was felt, I think, it was known by our team members, but it was important to me to have what was covert to become overt, to become expressly stated somewhere for others to see, that was distinct, that I could stand on. And then the accountability aspect of it, absolutely, you have to back it up because the world is now watching.
Yeah. And that's kind of a scary thing, right? Because when you take a stand, there's going to be a challenge that comes. There's going to be a failure to overcome. There's going to be something you're going to have to work through with someone else. And you see that in life in general. I mean, we're all parents, and I'm sure all of us have been perfect with all of our kids and never had to apologize to our spouse or anything. So, but it's that reality of, look, this is a higher calling. There's something important about what we're doing. And when we fail to live up to that standard, we have to own it and come back and take that responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. That authenticity, that's a part of it, is recognizing and owning up that I don't always get it right. I mess up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. all this discussion about whose name is on the letterhead and everything, I just have to point out I'm the only attorney of the three of us that actually has his name on his law firm letterhead. So,
Well,
for
Thomas,
whatever that's worth.
I'm sure that's because there's a lot of goodwill attached to your name. I'm sure that's why. It
Yeah,
makes, I
yeah,
completely get that.
yeah.
Right. No right or wrong way to do things. I mean, but
Right,
yes.
right. All good, all good. What are some lessons, Joshua, that you've learned just in law practice in general, like in the day-to-day operation of doing law stuff, law practice? What are some lessons that you have learned that have been helpful to you?
Wow. Yeah. Goodness. I think probably if I was coming out of law school now, if what would I want to know? So I think back to that first job that I had, that first year or two. What I really, what I expressed to my then partners is, I kept on telling them, I just wish that I had as much experience as you did. I wish I was in your shoes. I wish I knew as much as you did. And the bottom line is, we're always learning. We don't have, none of us have it completely figured out. And that's the beauty about the practice of law is we're always learning. And that's okay. And I think, in your first couple of years of practice, there's a lot of that fear or that feeling of inadequacy. Of It's a steep learning curve from law school to the private practice of law, but we're always learning. You don't have to have it all figured out. So that's one that comes to mind. I think a couple of others are, I would have, as a business owner now, and what I tell my team often, particularly as we're growing and we're trying to do it well, is, I don't need to know when things are going well. That's not the best information. The best information is when things aren't going well. What's the friction? And I think I try and create an atmosphere, a high trust atmosphere, where people understand it's okay. We are going to mess up. We're not going to have all the answers. And it would have been more helpful for me if those times that I just wanted when I was younger to prove myself, and I was just spinning my wheels looking for an answer, doing legal, if I would have just reached out and said, I don't know the answer here, or I'm struggling, or that's much more useful information. Those quick information loops, that's what helps us grow, well, as people, but also our firm to have better processes, quick feedback loops.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Anything else come to mind? Yeah.
Well, I think we could talk about those two items
Sure.
for a little bit there. And I just think about some things that my staff asks me from time to time. The question is, some problem arises and they're like, well, what do you typically do in this situation? Or what do you normally do? And my answer is, I've never seen this problem either. So I've got no standard operating procedure on this. We're going to have to learn this together. This is the practice of law. I haven't been doing this for half a century like Seth's partner has been doing, but 10 years is, I got a little bit of experience, but I haven't been doing it all that long. So yeah, we're always learning.
I love that answer of, it's okay to have the answer of, I don't know.
Yeah.
We joke a lot about the classic lawyer answer around here, and I'm sure it's the same in Michigan, but my clients like it when I say, I'm going to teach you how to be a lawyer. All you have to do is say, it depends, because we don't know, right? Every situation's unique, the variables, those kind of things. So that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. Joshua, let me ask you this. What are some of the mistakes that you made early on in your career, or maybe not so early on in your career, that you would have others avoid as they're getting ready to launch a law firm?
Yeah, I think that it does go back to some of what we just talked about. It's the having quick feedback loops of when I don't know something, because it's going to happen, particularly earlier on. It's reaching out. It's reaching out for help, or just admitting that. And I think that's been one. Other mistakes. I think in our profession, you can't over communicate, and I think the lack of, if I don't think I have something meaningful to tell, if it was when I was an associate, one of the partners, or if it's a client, I don't have a meaningful update. I think just having, sometimes clients just want to know that you hear them. They don't always need an answer right away. So having quicker communication. Over communicating is something I would have probably done earlier. And then, like we mentioned earlier, the nobody really teaches you the practice of law when you're in law school. So the figuring out earlier that I need to be proactive. Part of what we're doing if we're in the private practice of law is, it's inherently relational, but it's client interfacing. And as much as I don't want to say it's selling, we're selling our legal services, and if people don't know you're there, how are they going to know that you're the one that can add value to their lives and solve their problems? And so earlier on, it would be just step out, be more proactive. People aren't going to be looking for you. You've got to make sure that they know that you're there and you are there to help.
And so much good stuff there, Jeshua. And Thomas, can I pick his brain on the LinkedIn thing here real quick?
Go for it.
So one of the ways I've watched you from afar, if you will, is through the LinkedIn platform and read a lot of the things that you're there. And we were talking just before we started recording that I was like, my goodness, I feel a little inadequate because the followers or whatever on your page are much higher than they are on my page. And you had mentioned something that was intentional. There was a focus that you did to that. So walk us through a little bit about, in light of what you were just telling us in terms of having that confidence to be out and in front, how did that work specifically through the LinkedIn platform?
That's amazing. Do you set aside time throughout the week to do LinkedIn? That's wonderful. That is fantastic. Yeah, I think Seth and I have always talked about what do we have to do to grow a law practice, and so much of it is getting out there, shaking hands, getting to know people. I've talked a few times on the podcast about, I used to go to Business Network breakfasts and have, eat pancakes every single Tuesday, that kind of thing, just to get my name out there, to get the phone ringing. If your phone's not ringing and you don't have any work to do, you got to get out of the office and start doing stuff.
Well, I love how you phrase that in terms of automation, because we're in an AI and automated driven world, and you can automate yourself, right? Like building those routines and those habits and those foundational pieces of success through your day, through your week, through your month, quarter, and year is so important. And bringing yourself back to those reminders and really helping everything else be viewed through that lens is so critical, because it enables you to accomplish some pretty amazing things, like starting LightStone Law this year, which is pretty awesome, and the joy that can bring and the impact that can have. So, man, just so grateful for our time together. We won't keep you, even though we could probably go for hours on end, but we will have to check back in, at a short amount of time, see how things are going and what other lessons that you have learned. Thomas, anything else before we close up today?
I just really appreciate Jeshua joining us. I've just so enjoyed the conversation today, and I think it'll be a great episode for people to check out. Encourage everybody to go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel, Lifetime Legacy Lawyers podcast on YouTube, and then also go to lifetimelegacylawyers.riverside.com and check out all the podcasts that are in the library there. Jeshua, appreciate you being with us. We'll see everybody later.
Thanks, guys.